According to Clutch Points NBA reporter Brett Siegel, Tyler Herro could potentially be on the move ahead of the 2025-2026 NBA season. We all know that the Brooklyn Nets have had prior interest in Herro. Could Sean Marks look to make a move for the All-Star? Hello, everyone, and welcome in to the Brooklyn Boys Show right here on YouTube. Thank you all for joining us. Make sure you smash the like button and hit subscribe on your way into the building. It's completely free, and it helps us grow significantly here on the show. I'm your host, Connor Long, and today we are joined by a very special guest, a host on the Infinity Sports Network, and a host on Sirius XM NBA Radio, the great David Shepard, graces us with his presence right here on the show. Shep, super happy to have you back on the show. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Connor. Thanks so much for having me, man. Always a pleasure. And when there's good news for the Brooklyn Nets, that's far and few between. Happy to come and talk about it. There's not a lot of good things to talk about when it comes to Brooklyn lately. So
Absolutely, and there is so much that's happened this offseason with the Nets since we last spoke. Last we spoke, it was about a week ahead of the NBA draft, so you had the whole draft saga that we'll get into a little later with Brooklyn making all 5 of their first-round picks. Obviously, speaking back then, we thought Cam Thomas was still going, was going to sign an extension sometime soon. He remains a restricted free agent, but a key talking point of our last conversation was Cam Johnson, because we spoke the day after the Desmond Bane trade was ultimately facilitated and went through. Cam Thomas, shortly thereafter, was shipped off to the Denver Nuggets in exchange for Michael Porter Jr. and a first-round pick. Shep, how would you evaluate that trade for the Nets? Because I know you were very high on Cam Johnson, last time we spoke. How would you assess that trade for Brooklyn and the way they were able to get a package in exchange for a veteran like Johnson?
For me, I'm not a big Michael Porter Jr. guy. I think he had his moments in Denver, but there's a reason why at the end of games, more often than not, you just couldn't play him because he was so inconsistent. Obviously, you cannot teach 6'10", 6'11" athleticism and skill set, but I never felt like basketball was a huge priority for Michael Porter Jr. He seems to dabble in a lot of different things. He has his podcast, but there's a reason why Michael Malone no longer is employed as an NBA head coach. And it's not because of Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. So to me, Michael Porter Jr., the fact that I think he is the oldest player on the Nets, which just goes to show you how young they are.
Yeah. Him and Terrence Mann is like a grandpa on this team, Shep, and he's not even 30 years old.
It's unreal. Terrence Mann is more than a decade younger than me.
Wow.
Yeah. So look, if you are the Nets, this is not a good solution. Getting Michael Porter Jr., especially at this point of his career, where physically he is limited and compromised.
You don't think he's going to be able to reach a new level to his game in Brooklyn? You just think this is who he is right now, kind of what we saw last year?
When you're playing with an all-world center in Nikola Jokic, and you cannot get better from year 2, year 3, when the game is so much easier because of the double and triple team that he's able to command, because of all the attention that he's able to seek with his play. If you can't get better in that kind of a lineup with that kind of player, when you're going to get, playing with the Nets and there's, single team coverage, that's a problem for Michael Porter Jr. If you could not get better and improve your game with Nikola Jokic, who makes the game easier for everyone, I don't know how in the world he's going to go to Brooklyn and somehow be better when he couldn't even make it work with the 3-time NBA MVP Nikola Jokic.
What do you think would have been a fair trade for Cam Thomas? Cam Johnson, excuse me. Talking about Cam Thomas here.
There's a lot of Cams when it comes to Brooklyn.
A lot of Cams, and a lot of them that you talk about every single day, especially with the Cam Thomas saga. What would have been a fair return in a package for Cam Johnson, in your opinion?
Man, just someone that's ascending, someone that's on the way up. You look at someone, like a Cam Johnson, right? I feel like, his days of being a star player are very much in front of him. I feel like I'm doing an Aaron Boone speech right now, but you look at what this guy was able to do in Phoenix, and then you saw his time in Brooklyn. He was continuing to improve as a scorer. What did he average? Nearly 20 points a game per year last year.
I think it was 18 or 19. Yeah.
Right. So he's on the way up. So if nothing else, no matter who the player was that you were getting the return value for, you wanted to make sure that said player was at least improving, not regressing. And if you look at Michael Porter Jr., the reality is, especially in the postseason, you never felt like he was ever getting better from year two. Year two, he averaged 19 points per game. He has not topped that mark since, and we are now going on year 7.
The thing that's interesting with MPJ, though, Shep, that I think will kind of be intriguing to monitor this season in Brooklyn is he's going to have more opportunities. I think he's going to have more opportunities to score the ball. I mean, you look at where he was last year in Denver, obviously had a very strong supporting cast throughout his whole career, whether it's Nikola Jokic, obviously is the big man there, but Jamal Murray also facilitating that offense. He's going to have a ton of opportunities. I've heard people say that he can average 23, 24 points per game on this Brooklyn Nets team. I don't know if it's that high, but I think he could certainly touch that 20 range, Shep, because he has been in a system in Denver that really hasn't favored him when it comes to giving him the most amount of shots per game. His efficiency was high last year. He shot the 3 ball at a 40% clip. I think he's able to reach that next level when it comes to potentially averaging 20 points per game. When you look at his age, he's not ascending to the point where you view him as an MVP candidate in 2 or 3 years. I think that's well out the window for MPJ at this stage in his career. But I do think he can get to a point on this Brooklyn Nets team where he's the number 1 or number 2 scoring option, potentially giving you 20 a night.
Apparently this is like a memo from Mark Bartelstein or somebody who's feeding you this as his agent, because you're singing very high praise. And in an ideal world, Michael Porter Jr. would take this trade personally, right, Connor? Like, he would look at this as an impetus to kind of resurrect and turn around his career. He's in an incredible situation where he's playing with an all-time great player in Nikola Jokic and could not make it work. There's a reason why they weren't able to get past the second round once they won an NBA championship. And you don't want to necessarily assign all the blame to him, but I would cite him for being the biggest reason why the Nuggets were not able to get back to a championship level, why Michael Malone is no longer employed as a head coach by the Denver Nuggets. And, the truth of the matter is, the NBA is about culture. Connor, you follow this Brooklyn Nets team a lot closer than I do. You tell me the Nets culture over the last 3 years. How strong is it?
It hasn't been strong in the past, the 2 out of the past 3 years. Obviously, when you are trying to recover from that big three that you brought in, and then I think the culture's changed since you brought in Jordi Fernandez. We saw a team that was, especially at the beginning of last year, for the first 20 or 25 games, that was very, very physical, playing to the final buzzer. I mean, this is the team that pushed at the time, 12 games into the year, an 11-0 Cleveland Cavaliers team into overtime, 2 out of their first 3 matchups end of the year. This is a team that was challenging an elite Boston Celtics team at the beginning of the year. This is a team that's been playing physical. So I do think the identity has changed to some extent, as much as it can, though, Shep, in just 1 year. Obviously, this is a multi-year plan. Brooklyn is going to take their time with the rebuild. So there's certainly room to grow still from a cultural standpoint.
Right. And with all that being said, Philadelphia essentially quit last year. The Wizards stink. Charlotte stinks. And those are the only 3 teams that finish with a worse record in the Eastern Conference than the Nets. So, yes, you can cherry pick certain games of an 82-game schedule and say, well, this is where the Nets look somewhat competent. This is where the Nets look somewhat competitive. But at the end of the day, they weren't even one of the final 10 teams to even make the play-in tournament. So,
well, they started to tank down the stretch. And also, Shep, a guy like Dennis Schroeder, for example, Dorian Finney-Smith, those are guys who contributed heavily to a lot of the wins earlier on in the season. And you saw them get dealt down the stretch. So I think overall, when you look at a team like this with the Nets, I mean, they tried to tank that. They wanted to finish with a high pick once it was too late. They started winning games and they were like, let's stop winning. We're going to try to tank. And somehow you didn't tank right, so you land the 8th overall pick in the NBA draft. We'll get into the draft a little bit right here on the show. When it comes to the Nets, I think you want to get the most you can out of young guys while still having some veteran presence. Like, you can't put all 5 rookies on the floor. The Nets took 5 first-round picks this year, 3 of which are guards. You can't put all 5 of these guys on the floor. I think you need to have some veteran leadership on this team That was Cam Johnson last year. Nick Claxton can hopefully fit that bill this year if he's able to bounce back after a rough season last year. I think, the Nets need some veteran leadership, and I think that's what Michael Porter Jr. is going to bring here.
Yeah, again, there's no one that's going to confuse veteran leadership with Michael Porter Jr. in the same sentence that's been affiliated with him in his 6-year NBA career. I can appreciate your positivity and your desire to want to see the Nets get back into contention and in a competitive state, but they're not going to do so with Michael Porter Jr. spearheading the way. That I will promise you.
David Shepard and I in disagreement over Michael Porter Jr. right here on the show. Thank you all for joining us. Smash the like button, hit subscribe. David Shepard, Connor Long, right here with you guys on the Brooklyn Boys Show. Shep, I mentioned it at the top of the show. Brett Siegel reporting that teams around the league are monitoring Tyler Herro and his status with the Miami Heat ahead of the season. Obviously, he has 2 years left on a pretty significant contract, a $31 million cap hit this year, a $33 million cap hit next year. Could you see the Nets potentially trying to make a move for Tyler Herro? Would it make sense for Sean Marks and company?
Yeah, it makes sense for anyone to have Tyler Herro on their team. I mean, this is an individual that was averaging 24 points per game last season. In addition to that, an underrated facilitator, averaging 6 assists per game. And he just turned 25 years old. He understands what it means to play for an organization that makes an NBA Finals. He knows what it's like to come into a team and not be, one of the stars and kind of earn your keep and earn your way to being arguably the face of the franchise. And you look at what happened and transpired with Miami. Jimmy Butler, complained his way out of town. Bam Adebayo, I thought to some degree took a step back. And Tyler Herro emerged as the Heat's best player last year. So if you're the Nets, if you're any organization, you want Tyler Herro on your squad. Again, an absolute deadly shot maker, someone that can make guys around him better. I would obviously say at this point of his career, he's on the up and up. He's ascending, and I can legitimately argue him right now being a top 30 NBA player. Obviously, coming off of his first All-Star appearance. If I'm the Nets, I'm going full in on Tyler Herro for sure.
So you'd value him more than a Cam Thomas, for example. I made this take on my show the other day. I think Tyler Herro is a better player than Cam Thomas. Like, if you're going just based off shooting prowess, who can average more points per game, you go with Cam Thomas. But Tyler Herro, throughout his career, in my opinion, has been a way more efficient shooter. Like you said, a way better facilitator, a way better passer, playmaker. Not only can he give you 20 points per game, but he also elevates the floor of the other 4 guys on the floor with him. Shep, how would you kind of compare Tyler Herro to Cam Thomas and define who's better here?
Well, one guy has how much playoff experience in Cam Thomas, and the other guy has NBA Finals experience. If you want to trend in the right direction, if you want to get this Nets team into their first NBA Finals since 2002, right? If you want to get them in their first conference semifinals since 2021, you want guys that have been there, done that. And Cam Thomas is an exceptional scorer. No question about that. Can put the ball in the basket with the best of them. But Tyler Herro has done it on the biggest stage. And Heat culture, I know it's not as strong as what it was a couple of years back, but it's a real thing. So there is no question to me which player is an upgrade between Thomas and Herro.
Now I have a question for you, Shep. This is a mock trade that I kind of just was messing with before the show. Let's say, so Cam Thomas, I don't think the Nets would trade for Tyler Herro and keep Cam Thomas. You're kind of picking or choosing here between the Nets. So it would have to be a sign and trade with Cam Thomas, and for a sign and trade to occur, the player has to be on a 3-year deal. So let's say the Nets signed Cam Thomas, 3-year deal, around the taxpayer MLE each year. So around $14 million a year on that 3-year deal. Alongside, we'll give the Rockets 2027 first round pick that the Nets acquired. That so Cam Thomas on that deal with that first round pick. Do you think that would make sense for Brooklyn to ship off to Miami in exchange for Herro? Because keep in mind, the Nets would also have to eat that contract that's pretty significant over the next 2 seasons.
Yeah, but it depends on what the Nets' motivations are. If they're in the business of saving money and not having to worry about, all that comes with the financial compensation and, all that comes with, the new collective bargaining agreement, then by all means, play it safe, look to save a little bit of money. But if you want to give this deserving fan base an opportunity to compete, you have to be willing to deal with the second apron. You have to be willing to go for broke. And you talk about Tyler Herro being out there. That's an individual that they don't grow, heroes don't grow on trees, literally and figuratively in this case. If you are the Nets and Tyler Herro is available, you got to do everything you can to make this happen.
Shep, thank you so much for sparing some time for us right here on the show. Thank you so much for joining us right here on the Brooklyn Boys Show. You got any final thoughts you want to share with the people that are non-basketball related, basketball related before we go to break?
Well, I think that it's so interesting, Connor, because, Bronny James is getting criticism right now for not attending Luka Doncic's press conference when it comes to Luka's 3-year extension that he signed. And my whole thing is, man, would any other second-round draft pick in year 2 get this much criticism for not showing up at a press conference?
Last name, Shep. It's the last name.
It's unreal the way the media portrays this guy. It's like we just want to use him as like a piñata in target practice.
As a Jet fan, I know a guy from last season who dealt with that, Shep.
Right. Like the guy drastically improved from year 1 to year 2 in summer league. The guy never puts himself in a position where he's embarrassing him or his family. He goes out and he works hard. It's not his fault his father hijacked the Lakers franchise and said, draft my son. He was only, taking advantage of what was given to him. And I just think it's unbelievable that we got people coming after him in the media. So I think so much of what we do is so heavily predicated on the way the media covers particular players, particular topics. And we have to do a better job of being responsible in how we cover individuals. And I also want to say this. This is WNBA related. There is zero place for what is transpiring right now in terms of fans throwing sex objects onto the court of WNBA games. Now happened 3 times in the last 7 days. This is incredibly disrespectful. It is dangerous.
Absolutely.
And these individuals that are the perpetrators, I hope that the full extent of the law and book gets thrown at them, because this needs to be cleaned up. Just because the WNBA doesn't generate the same type of revenue as the NBA does not mean they should not be treated with the utmost respect and decency. And these are world-class athletes. It's about damn time that we treated like them as such.
Shep, great message there. Appreciate you. As always, appreciate the time, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Connor. I appreciate you, man. Continue the great job that you're doing.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's Audacy's David Shepard. I'm your host, Connor Long, right here on the Brooklyn Boys Show. Quick break, a word from our sponsors, and we will be back. Stay tuned, folks.
You are listening to the Brooklyn Boys Show with your host, Connor Long. If you're enjoying the show, drop us a sub and leave a like. It helps more Nets fans find us. Quick break, then back to talking Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Today's episode of the Brooklyn Boys Show is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Shoreline Sports Cards, located at 137 Main Street in Port Washington, New York. Whether you're chasing the newest hobby boxes, grabbing singles, or just want to talk cards with fellow collectors, Shoreline is the spot. They've got a massive selection across basketball, football, baseball, and more, with new inventory hitting the shelves every single week. If you're local, make sure to stop by the shop at 137 Main Street in Port Washington and check it out for yourself. If you're not in the area, no worries at all. You can still keep up with Shoreline by following them on Instagram, eBay, and whatnot for product drops, live breaks, deals, and hobby updates. All links are right in the description down below. Huge thanks to Shoreline Sports Cards for supporting the show and the Brooklyn Nets community. It is the Brooklyn Boys Show, streaming live right here on YouTube. Connor Long here with you guys on the show. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you smash that like button and hit subscribe. It's completely free and it helps us grow significantly here on the show as we chase 500 subscribers. Thank you all for your support. Tomorrow, 9 p.m. EST, we are back, joined by the host of the Nets Fans You Know podcast, that being the great Pete, who will join us live at 9 p.m. EST tomorrow for a full live show. Sorry, these past 2 days we've had great guests, but the scheduling hasn't been able to work out where we've been able to do a full live show. So tomorrow with Pete, we'll have a Q&A. We'll get into so many juicy topics surrounding the Brooklyn Nets. So make sure you stay tuned for that, and you can do so by smashing the like button and hitting subscribe. Again, appreciate all of your support. As always, right here on the Brooklyn Boys Show. That'll do it for me. I'm your host, Connor Long, signing off right here on the show. Have a great rest of your evening, everyone. And as always, go Nets, baby. Peace out.